allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good. Couple housekeeping things. Thank you so much, Supervisor, for opening up the town hall here. Actually, when I drove in, I remember last year, 2 years ago, we were knocking on doors, campaigning, so we got to come up to the lake again today. But, and also, this is good news. This is our 60th official town hall. That's the most of any member in the Northeast, and we enjoy doing that. This is part of the job that I enjoy, that I think 100% committed to it. And so I think a few of you have been to maybe some of our town hall meetings before, but just some housekeeping things. We always point out the emergency exits, which are right in the back here, and when we come in. Once security issues became a concern, it's a scary situation, which is something we don't anticipate. We don't ever expect to see that again, but we always prepare for it. Introduce you to some folks in the office. Here, Murphy. Allison. They work out of the Corning office, and so they're with us today. And James Smith is our district director, and Joe Sempliski is also our district director. So, how are you? Good. Just briefly before we open it up, and we won't do the written questions because we're running a little bit.
If we do run out of time, though, if anybody has any additional questions, we'll make sure we get them forward.
Yeah, that would be good. So if we do run out of time, and make sure we get the name, contact, and the issues that we get, would be great. Just briefly before we open up our conversation, just got back from Washington late last night, and as you know, we have been watching the news. We got the defense authorization bill voted on last week, came out of the House. We did the CJS Commerce, Justice, and Science appropriation bill last week. Got that out of the House. So we're getting kind of the appropriations phase of the process and spending some time there. I will say I'm still very frustrated with what's going on in D.C. Amen. Amen. I'm with you on that. Yeah. Amen. A lot of these guys down there thought they were elected for a year or 2 months. I got elected for 2 years. And so we should be doing the work nonstop just because a campaign is coming up. It shouldn't stop us from doing the work. So on that front, the problem with that is not a lot of legislation, just practically speaking, that's going to happen between now and Election Day. We just see it at the Senate level, we see it in the White House. It's campaigns, 100%, 7 days a week, and we're trying to push forward as much as we can. That being said, I will tell you, the lame duck session, the November, December, early January session of Congress is going to be when a lot of activity occurs. You know, we got the tax rates, the individual tax rates are all expiring at the end of the year. We have $1.2 trillion worth of cuts that are going into effect as a result of the Budget Control Act. You got things like how our doctors get paid under Medicare expiring at the end of the year because the doc fix or whatever we want to call it kicks in again, and that will be a 31% potential cut if we do nothing to our doctors under Medicare on the reimbursement rate. Unemployment expires at the end of the year. What else is there? Potentially a highway bill. So the highway bill is one of those areas that maybe something will happen between now and then. We're in a conference committee right now. The House passed a short bill and the Senate passed a short bill. So they're in a conference committee to try to see if we can't come up with something. And the highway bill is all the funding for our bridges, roads, you know, that infrastructure bill. I'm hopeful they'll come out of that with a multi-year bill. We've been very supportive of a 5-year bill at a minimum because as being a former mayor, supervisor, relate to it. Can you plan anything in 6 months or 2 months or 18 months? That's what the different versions are. And these projects take years to plan, to design, and to fund. And I think these little band-aids that they've been doing on the highway bill is something that's just a waste of money. It's just inefficient use of dollars. So let's see what happens on the conference bill, but it may be a situation where that's also thrown onto the pile at the end of the year. That being said, the other thing that we're focusing on in our office, this is about jobs, this is about the economy, this is about how do we get folks, you know, back to work in America. And we have a business plan in our office, I run our office like a business, and what we hand out here, we have a mission statement, and there are 4 points on there. This is a part of the mission statement. With developing jobs for America. And the four areas that we focus on, and I'm interested in your input on, is one, we're trying to attack and come up with a credible plan for the national debt. This is the monster in the room. These are some charts on our national debt. We are now at $15.8 trillion of national debt, adding to it at about $1.3 trillion a year. Not sustainable, very problematic. And the problem with the economic recovery that the debt truly represents is it jeopardizes that confidence that when you're making investments in an economy, you want to make sure the economy is strong and that it's going to be there and you know what's going to happen. So that's why we spend a lot of time on the debt for not only the economy but also the long-term risks that it has to the country as a whole. Second point we focus on, comprehensive tax reform. We usually have a copy of the tax code. We left it up. There it is. I serve on the Ways and Means Committee, and that's the chief thing that Ways and Means Committee has done since day one. It's in the Constitution. It deals with the way we raise revenue in America. That's the tax code. So that's the primary thing we spend time on: healthcare, trade policy, pretty much everything that we deal with goes to the Ways and Means Committee. But that's 70,000 pages. If you print that book out into regular format, regular font, 70,000 pages of legislation and extension. And it's on a temporary stand-date to the end of the year. So if you're talking about, we just had the opportunity, we met with about a dozen, 10 CFOs from companies like Caterpillar, Procter & Gamble. There's about 15 of us that got together. One of the things that they're telling us is that you're asking us to invest in America, right? Put new plants in, start building things in America again. And I'm a business guy, started 4 businesses. Would you invest $100 billion to let these plants take, not knowing what your taxes are going to be next year, what your taxes are going to be 5 years down the road, what your taxes, I mean, these are 30, 40, 50-year investment decisions. And they're just essentially what they're saying is one of the biggest things, on top of the fact how uncompetitive the code is, the lack of certainty when it comes to tax policy and simplification of really knowing what is in there causes everyone to kind of sit on the sideline and just pucker up and not make those decisions. And so that's really a real barrier to job creation and job growth. So we're really pushing comprehensive tax reform in our office and trying to do it in a way that's a big picture, comprehensive, competitive perspective. Third area we spend time on is regulatory relief. The regulations coming out of Washington, they are expanding at an alarming rate. So we attack the overburdening of our private sector in America. We do it by using the office to spotlight irresponsible and lack of common sense regulations, because we find we've had some success there. And other members who do the same thing. One of the best examples that was successful I can put out there for you. 2. One was a couple years ago with the hazardous, when they were going to treat milk on dairy farms as a hazardous waste site. It was actually being discussed in the EPA. Spotlighted it, EPA backed off. Recently, we were part of the effort that put the spotlights on the Department of Labor regs that came out for our youth on farming operations. They wanted to ban that, and they wanted to say that was not going to be able to be allowed any longer. We put a spotlight on that, and if you saw it 2 weeks ago, they backed off. So that tool's been pretty effective. That's a good tool, but it doesn't do what needs to be done long term. So we're talking about things like appropriations on the agencies, cutting their funding to get their attention, and really having a cost-benefit approach on any future regulations that come out, and forcing them to do those cost-benefit analysis on the regulation. And then the fourth point is an all-in comprehensive energy policy, because if we're ever going to build stuff in America, we need the power to do it. And that's the economic component of it. And then when you talk about energy, I always talk about it also with the impact on national security. The politics of oil is real, and we're engaging in areas across the world because of the oil issues and our dependency issues. And the sooner and the more that we can get off of that dependency, I'm very interested and I'm going to support it. And we're going to go all in. And we need to recognize, because there's some people that are saying, oh, the solution is alternatives and renewables, and let's just put all our eggs in one basket. I don't have a problem with putting alternatives and renewables in that comprehensive energy vision for America, And that's what we spend a lot of time on. But I could go on and on and on. I mean, there's so much going on, in the sense of setting the table for the end of the year and different issues. But I came here to listen. I'm here to take ideas back to DC as much as I'm here to bring information from the DC team to you. So, with that, it's an open book. Warren?
That's the one.
That's the one. Yeah.
That's coming up again relatively soon.
It is. Debt ceiling is coming up. Probably not going to happen before the election, just because they were fighting tooth and nail to ever have it come up again before the election. And even if it does potentially come back in, they're going to cash. There's enough cash flow gimmicks that they're going to deploy. Really listening to the Treasury and having meetings with Beckner and those guys, that they'll get it past the election. But it's coming. And I don't know if you watched the speaker last week, gave a speech on the Economic Foundation. I think he was pretty clear as to what needs to be done. And he was pretty clear also, I think, doing the responsible thing in that bringing that debate out so that when we get to the debt ceiling debate again, it doesn't catch anybody by surprise. It doesn't, no one can say, well, we're at the brink, we're going to have to do it, and kick a can down the road. It's really trying to put out long-term solutions and use that as a vehicle to push the ball forward. And he's been clear, and we got to pay the bills, because whatever reforms, like when we were looking at it back in the summer, and why I voted for raising the debt ceiling last time before, was because if you did the spending reforms and you defaulted, any type of spending reform recovery that you had would have been wiped out because of this one. This interest on our debt, this is $221 billion. This is $3.6 trillion that we spend on our federal government, and this little sliver here is on the $15 trillion that we're paying the interest to service it. That's at horrible low rates. That's at about 1 to 2% is primarily what that debt is made up of on the interest level. If you default, just like you default at home on your mortgage or on your credit cards, those rates go up. And if that goes up to say 7%, 8%, goes up about 6 points, you are talking about having to find about $600 to $700 billion in interest payments to cover that debt. And so just to put it in perspective, what we spend on defense is about $700 billion. So you're going to have to take a swap of $700 billion to cover that debt if we defaulted. Now, that should raise another red flag, which keeps me up at night and what causes the rest of my hair to fall out. Is this interest is not going to maintain itself at 1 to 2%. That's not going to happen. It's just rule of economics and world economy. That rate's going to go up. That's why this debt crisis is coming. And we should not live in denial anymore. We have to be honest about it. And until we fundamentally address it, when that starts hitting 7, 8%, you're going to be like Italy. It's going to be like Italy. Italy's going down at about 7% debt level. And you've seen what's going on in Greece and France and all the issues we've had there recently. That interest rate on that debt is a big driver of what's causing that crisis. Yeah, please.
How long before we hit that wall, not a ceiling?
The wall.
When we hit the wall with our spending? I mean, I grew up on the philosophy as a kid, if you didn't have it, you didn't
Because they used to come in and go, hey, you know, you gotta support this, and because we're gonna get you on the front page of the paper, we'll cut the ribbon, and then, oh, everyone's gonna be happy, and you'll get reelected. We don't care about that.
That's right.
We don't care. We ask the question, why, what, and they're like, now they're getting better, which is good, because they're getting better in the sense of they're bringing good information in, and before they were just giving fluff. And to a T, out of the 80, the 90 of us, as freshmen, that's driven more information to be put onto the table. And that's a more substantive debate than the political debate of cutting ribbons and getting on front page of the paper.
Is anybody down there thinking out of the box? I mean, during the Depression, we built the Empire State Building, we put a man on the moon in the 60s. This is a big deal, but this isn't nothing that we can't deal with. Is there anybody thinking out of the box?
We're trying. There's guys, you know, you got Paul Ryan, you know, who's done a lot of work, right? Your budget, been up 2 years in a row. But as Paul will tell you, and as others will tell you, I mean, look what's happened. I mean, that document, people have tried to use that politically. They're using that, they're salivating to use that document in the upcoming campaigns. And that's why I was involved in a little discussion about 6 months ago. We had the discussion whether or not we were going to do another budget in the House. And the decision, you know, do we do this because of all the political fallout and everything else? To a T, everybody that was involved in that small group, they all said, no, we need to do it because we got elected to lead. And you may not like what's there, but at least we're going to stand by something and say, here's black and white. You know, we also did something in our office personally. I support the Paul Ryan budget. I voted for it. And if we had all levers of the government, that's what you would see, right? I think you would see that. One party, Republicans, it would be the Paul Ryans, I think the Senate and the White House. Recognizing, and again, I try to be as practical as I can. I wanted to send a signal that, look, I'll be one of those guys who is willing to jump, who is willing to go out and put my neck on the line. And a budget came up, and it was the Lots Rec Cooper budget. It was keyed off of Simpson Bowls, but it wasn't 100% Simpson Bowls. And 38 of us joined hands, and we jumped. And there was a lot of guys that said, I'm going to go with you, don't worry, you're going to be able to. After I hit the button and the time expired, I looked around, and I'm like, well, I'm pretty lonely here. But I wanted to send a message. And there was a lot of people that took some heat off that. We had some people that were really concerned, but it was kind of wasn't really the ultimate solution, but it was more of a solution recognizing that if we're in a split government, that's the type of thing, that's the kind of big deal that's going to get a lot of these issues resolved. And we were willing to do that because I didn't go there just to sit on the sidelines to become a congressman every 2 years and sit there for 30, 20 years. That's not what we're about.
You try to do something, then they tell you, then they tell about it, so you're putting grandma off the cliff.
Well, exactly. And that's why we were talking about Social Security and Medicare, and that's why we're talking about it now, is because and you're going to hear this election against us. You're going to hear that, you know, I'm trying to kill grandma, I'm trying to kill.
I already read the Medicare, but nobody said anything about it.
Yeah. Well, and that's what we're trying to do. These two programs, we do nothing. We did the Medicare Trustees report just came out last week, 2 weeks ago. And if you read that, it's not a question if it's going down, it's a matter of when. And you can have that argument. There's a legitimate argument to be had. Is it 20, 30? It's going to be an election like the old days in traditional politics, status quo, Tom Reed's killing grandma, that's why he went to Washington.
actually that covers the fracking guidelines for New York State. I just downloaded that information. It's a 1,500 piece document that if you download it, it will come down digital. So that's out there and that gives you all the regs that New York State wants to implement. But I haven't read the whole entire document, but I was impressed when we went to Houghton College. They actually had a speaker go through that, and that's why I looked it up, because I want more information on it.
That's good, and we need it. The more information, the better. And we need to do it right. But we do have to take a look at it from a perspective of, you know, not just the economic opportunity associated with it, bringing the gas out of the ground, but that power source for our industrial manufacturing base moving forward. If we're ever going to have a chance to build things in America again, we're going to need that power. And natural gas and tight sand and shale oil is important. Yeah, please. Oh, I'm sorry, behind you.
No, I'm sorry.
You already spoke once, you're done.
Congressman, I applaud your support of fossil fuels for two reasons. They're cheap and they're abundant, and three reasons actually. Most importantly, they're reliable. Unlike the liberal fantasy of the renewables, which aren't so much. And there's been several attempts in the Congress this last 3 or 4 months to try to extend the production tax credit for wind energy in particular. Unfortunately, all those attempts have failed. And I hope that you'll oppose any further attempts down there in the Great Halls of Congress to renew the credit, because it's a pop.
I appreciate that input. And I am aware of that, how those have expired. And I'm always straight up. And I'm an all of the and above guy. And those renewables, the production tax credits, are something that is part of comprehensive tax reform and extenders I would support. The issue with it is the accountability associated with it. And we have supported them with a sunset. So that they're not these ethanol tax credits that just went on indefinitely. The industry needs to be, if it's going to be there, it's going to be there. It needs to stand on its own 2 feet. It can't be put on life support indefinitely like ethanol. So we may have a disagreement there, and I appreciate that, but I really, because those, even though alternatives renewables are not the solution now, they have to be part of the solution, and also long term. You never know what's going to be coming down the pipeline.
Can I bring it to a local issue?
Sure, please.
Our veterans are having a real struggle here. Perhaps Steve could explain it better. He's got more of the detail. Can I explain it?
Well, in January of this year, our veteran service officer retired.
Okay.
3 years ago, the county administrator and the county chairman, legislature chairman, wanted the president administrator at that time to handpick a person to take his place. He submitted that plan to them in writing. They accepted it. He picked the man, trained him, taught him everything he knew over 20-some years. And lo and behold, because they got 10 new legislators on the legislature this year in January, the chairman decided to put this thing out for public appointment. The county administrator narrowed it down to 3 people. The man that John Sampson had groomed and taught and does a super job, and 2 other gentlemen. Well, in the committee of 7 legislators, they couldn't decide which one of the 3 they wanted. Well, actually, it was 2 that was running. It was Kevin, he had 5. There was 5 people supporting him.
Okay.
2 for this other fellow. And one of the new legislators said, that was for the 2, said if you don't pick him, his guy, he wasn't going to support the other. So in their infinite wisdom, they took it back to the legislature of 21 legislators. They picked the 3rd guy, has no credibility, no training, doesn't know anything about what's going on. And here we are, paying a guy $70,000 a year between wages and benefits, and he can't even answer the phone. He can't touch a record in that office can't do anything for us.
So what's,
We run a van service, we have 2 vans that the veterans raise the money for and support. We buy them. They're all staffed by volunteers. Telephones, vans, and they take veterans to appointments at Bath, at Buffalo, up from Dave, wherever they gotta go. And now, a lot of those drivers have said, that's enough, we just ain't gonna do it anymore. The Veterans Administration pays for the insurance and the license plates on the vans. Last week, the Joint Veterans Council here in Cattaraugus County have given $10,000 in money they raised to Genesis House, to the van service, and there's several different things that they gave money to. All raised, no money from the taxpayers. And here we get stuck with this. It's just, and it makes no sense to anybody.
so
They just ignore the guy with all the credibility.
has there been any public response as to why the county did what they did? Oh, maybe you have something to put in here, please.
I'm the director and president of the Christian Youth Corps.
Okay.
And I'm here in support of the veterans and their desire to be able to pick and choose who it is that represents them the best. The office has had a 98% completion rate and is the highest in the state of speedy return on problems. If you have a problem, you have a veteran. We have a good guy that's in the office already, and he was groomed by the director. For some unknown reason, they take somebody that's never done any of this and run a convenience store to put him in charge. They're gambling with every one of these veterans, which now is 1,100 member backlog. And we know where Kevin was at because I personally have dealt with Kevin many a time. I've seen Kevin put people into his own home. He's placed people in our apartments because he cares about the veterans. We've got somebody that really, truly cares, not because it's a job, not because they get paid, but because of somebody that really cares about the veterans. For some reason, which we would all like to know, why are they pulling him out when he was the one that every one of the veterans and VFWs and American Legions endorsed and honored? We ask is let's have public forum where we can go talk instead of 3 o'clock on Thursday afternoon when most of us are working. Working people cannot go to a 3 o'clock afternoon legislature meeting. We would like to have the opportunity to be able to show in force the thousands of people that would be there for this, from the Patriot Guard, from the veterans, from
Sure.
tribal and three public charities like ourselves that appreciate somebody when they send somebody your way. You know that person is qualified. You don't even have to bother looking into the background.
They had a stack of endorsements from the county VFW commander, the county American Legion commander of endorsement, plus several others. The legislators were told to ignore those.
And the new man can't, on our record, so he's certified. It's going to take almost a year.
To get them certified.
Get him certified.
I remember there was an article in the Only Times about this, and I saw it, and I get summaries every day.
So all the veterans of Cattaraugus County is part of Allegheny County.
So there's been no public explanation as to why they went with? Okay.
Right, they just run roughshod over us.
We didn't really hurt the veterans.
Yeah, I want to talk to them after the meeting. I think
Okay.
they're gonna give me all the information. 'Cause I
They
wanna
just
talk
run
about
roughshod over us.
That doesn't make any
They got triggered by the TMI.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense at all. I mean,
This explains the whole thing from
Oh,
inception of Mr., or when John Sampson, who was the old county director, went to the legislature and 2 or 3 years ago.
Is your contact information on it?
No, it could be.
That would be great.
And I probably, many of you probably know Doc Schmidt from our office. Has anyone met Doc? He's, Warren knows him. Warren worked with him. Doc stayed with us from Eric's administration, and that's irrelevant to me because what he does is he delivers on the issues of veterans. He's a retired vet, he's a foreman himself, and all he does is veteran issues. And so that's a gentleman I'd like to introduce all of you to, and anybody who's got a veteran issue, don't hesitate to give us a call. Again, I was taught young, stand with a vet, you stay with a vet. And so that's why Doc does that full time. And what we want to do is make sure that you know the resources that we offer. I go to the Bath VA all the time, Canandaigua VA, Buffalo. I haven't as much.
They didn't do that with us initially, they really.
They just turned her back. That doesn't make any sense to me.
It's
So
embarrassing too.
let's definitely,
Make sense to anyhow.
so let's definitely follow up on the
Yeah.
issue, and we'll reach out to our contacts over, obviously, we work with the county legislators, and let's see what we can do.
We're gonna work a little bit Wednesday.
Oh, you're gonna go Wednesday? Okay, we'll go Wednesday, and we'll get her back. I don't think they need it, though. I appreciate that.
One of the legislators just told you, you got a tiger by the tail.
And did they get,
And they said, we might have.
so they're actually starting to maybe listen.
We're not going away.
Hope not.
We're not going.
Is the third, other than is the guy they actually went with, is he local? Does anybody know, or did they bring him from the completely outside?
I wonder if they need occupied little, that would take.
Our local legislators are on our side, but then again, when they went in to vote on this third guy, they voted unanimous.
Tell the president I'm busy. Yeah, me neither.
I'm busy too, I don't know if
When
it's.
they went in to vote on this third guy, the entire legislature voted in affirmative.
All right.
It's just, it's all
Let's,
wrong.
we need to dig a little bit. Appreciate, because I did see the article, but then I didn't see what it said. That was just the tip of the iceberg, it really is. So,
I'm quite sure they've done something illegal, but I don't know what it is yet, other than the open meetings law. I know they violated that.
so let's see what we can do. We can be hopefully an advocate and a mediator. That's for sure.
That's what we certainly need.
Just to be somebody to put people in
This
contact
is
with each
nuts.
other.
This is nuts.
So there's something like, what, 8,000 veterans?
But, okay.
He has to be approved by all of the American Legion, in the county, the folks in the county, and our county convention is second. Third.
Very good.
So I can't imagine him getting the endorsement.
Found out how to shut it off.
I don't know how they're gonna get around that, but let's see what we can do in the meantime. Wednesday nights,
The legislators did not, most of them did not know about his credentials and how he was had to be certified. They thought they could just send him to the state, he'd get 30 days and get accredited. Well, that's fine and dandy, but you're not gonna touch my records because they belong to American Legion.
And the records going to the league.
Yeah. Very proud. They gotta be handled appropriately at all times.
We had total disregard for the veterans in the county, be it Cattaraugus or Allegheny. They did not have full knowledge. I don't believe that most of the legislators realize exactly what it takes to be accredited as a service officer. And, I think the wool pulled over our eyes. Somebody got away without people really realizing what they had accomplished.
That's really surprising, because we've had some dealings with those kind of, and they're usually pretty good about reaching out, but obviously it didn't happen in this case, so let's make sure we follow up on it and do what we can.
Appreciate that, sir.
Yep, no, you had something?
Yeah, Tom, I've been reading a lot about this green, everything is green, let's go green, let's go green, let's go green. There's a tremendous amount of green funding. And I read an article after article that green funding, if you are just slick enough to write a letter to whomever, there's tax credits and funding, if it pertains to anything green for the environment or whatever, wasteful money. It's wasted, 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 wasted. You got any touch or any feel on where we're going with this? Because it sounds to me, from what I've read, and of course you're always reading somebody else's opinion.
Yeah, sure.
I would rather see facts than opinions, but it appears to me that they're just spending money on a federal level on this. Unbelievable. And that all affects what's in there.
Absolutely, that's part of it. And I will say, and going back to the production tax credit issues, I think the attitude in the House now, I can honestly tell you, has changed. It is about accountability. That's what we talk about all the time as a freshman class. That's what we've been able to push members who've been around a long time to really go down that path. And I think you see that, Darrell Issa on the Oversight Committee, you see a lot of stuff coming out on him. Solyndra being uncovered in the Energy and Commerce Committee. So we really are starting to set the tone of, we're going to watch every dollar. And it's not just the difference that their media's not picking up on, and this is where the distinction is. not just green energy, it's
No.
every dollar that is
Well,
spent.
yeah, true.
And, you know, like we did in HR1, our office, we went through, the first bill that came up in the first appropriation, the continuing resolution, was called HR1. And we dropped 3 amendments because we went through line by line, digging through this stuff, and you're spending $3.6 trillion. It's
Mhm.
pretty large. And we found out we were building a sewer in Tijuana, Mexico. We put a big spotlight on that. We were providing the Presidio Trust, which is the old base out in San Francisco. Yeah, and what happened is they sold it off, and there was a 15-year deal with them, and they have done extremely well with the conversion of that property. And what I suggest today is that $15 million that comes in this last year's payment, because you're leasing it out to guys like Lucasfilms, you're you're developing a property, selling townhouses and condos, because it's a beautiful area. I've never been there, but seen pictures of it. Maybe this is something we could chip in on it. That's in Nancy Pelosi's district. She was not happy with me at all. She came right down to the floor. She came right down to the floor and really picked a fight with us. But I just said, you know, I'm raising the questions. The biggest one that we uncovered was the Foreign Service officers. They were doing a classic manipulation, in my opinion, of the retirement their last 3 years. They were getting requests in to get assigned to areas of the world that are unsafe. It's like hazard duty pay type thing. And what they did is they would bump themselves up for the last 6 months, and then that's their calculation for their retirement. That was a big one. So overall, we were able to save about $124 million from the work we did in spotlighting that stuff. And then others jumped onto it, and we highlighted it, and we moved forward with it. But that's the attitude that we're bringing to the table on everything. And we need to root it out. The thing I would like to stress as we close is that when you're dealing with this problem, I do agree and wholeheartedly, waste, fraud, and abuse, things like Salinger, needs to be cleaned up, needs to be caught, needs to be enforced. But there's a tendency with a lot of elected officials to come out in front of you and say, you know what, if we clean up all the waste, fraud, and abuse and I take a pay cut, I'll solve this problem for you. This problem is so much bigger than that. We've seen reports. If you catch all the waste, fraud, and abuse, you got it all. There's about $300 billion, maybe, that you could potentially uncover. You are dealing with a $1.3 trillion problem every year. And so it needs to be done, but I do not want to give any misgivings that people who come in and tell you that there's the easy solution, you know, I hear, you know, again, waste, fraud, and abuse, cut my salary, and then what was the other one? Pork barrel spending, you know, all that stuff. You know, raising taxes on the top 2%. If you raise taxes on the top 2%, you cut all the waste, fraud, and abuse, and you cut the congressman's salary to 0, you solve the deficit problem. It's so much.
Confiscate all they make up there, you wouldn't sell it.
You ain't come close. You ain't come close. So, you know, as we get into this election process, there's going to be a lot of discussion. I'm sure it's going to be on the presidential politics will be in our race. Let's raise taxes on the top 2%. Let's have oil and gas pay it, Wall Street pay it, the bucket rule, all that stuff. And I'm not going to get into that debate right now, but even if you did concede all that stuff, you're talking $70 billion on the top 2%, President Obama.
Do we still have to subsidize the oil companies with billions of dollars a year when they're making billions of dollars a year?
Let's talk about that. Because subsidy of the oil and gas company, what are you referring to?
Well, just the money we give them alone, you know? The government gives them billions of dollars a year.
See, and
they're
that's,
making billions of dollars.
see, that's there's a lot of misinformation. Okay? And let's just be clear on it. Because what we're talking about is the deductions for them to write off. I'm not defending their, because it's all part of comprehensive tax reform, and that'll be all part of that conversation. But there are no checks that are going to the oil and gas companies as a subsidy. What we're talking about is things like intangible drilling costs, which is the development of wells, oil and gas wells, and how they write off those intangible costs, such as certain muds that they use for the development of the wells, certain labor that they identify. They have to capitalize it now, under the proposals you read, they would have to capitalize it as opposed to write it off in the year they incur it. So there's a lot of those things that
Would they go broke if they hadn't paid for it themselves?
No, they won't go broke, but just so we're clear, because people are trying to find a bad guy. And I guess this is what I'm not articulating well. They're trying to find a bad guy. And that's an easy target. Oil and gas, they're the bad guys. No. Now, do they need to be part of the conversation? Do they need to be part of the fact that GE pays zero? The fact that Corning Incorporated, my home corporation, pays zero in income tax? I look right and I've told them, no, you need to be part of this. You need to be paying part of your tax bill. You don't pay zero. And that's what comprehensive tax reform is
See,
about.
it just gets me, they're making so much money and we're so subsidized.
Yeah, but it's not subsidizing, because that's the issue that I take, that I respectfully disagree. Generally, they're not tax credit. There's one provision with the 199 tax credits, the 199 manufacturing tax credit, which is for domestic manufacturers, which is everybody. Hollywood takes advantage of the 199 manufacturing tax credit. The small companies that are manufacturing here locally take advantage of that tax credit. Oil and gas does take advantage of that because it's a tax credit for manufacturing. Actually, the funny thing is that they're actually limited, the oil and gas companies already, as to what proportion of the tax credit they can take advantage of. And I'm not here to defend oil and gas, but what I'm trying to say is it's not as simple as it's a subsidy that's going to oil and gas. And just because they make money, they should all of a sudden, if we take the money away from them, the problem goes away. The problem doesn't go away. It really doesn't. And it has some unintended consequences too.
And good question
Sure.
about the tax reform that you're about to do. Realistically, as you had said earlier, that government, a business is not willing to talk, or they're not going to create jobs because they can't depend that 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the road that the taxes are going to be there. Is that what they're working on, that 30 years down the road, they will actually be able to say, okay, this is what's going to be in place, and I can count on this for the next 30 years? It's not going to change?
But not that it's not going to change, but what we are not supportive of, what I'm not supportive of, even like the Bush tax rates, they were put on a 10-year window because of a procedural political issue that they had to get through the Senate on. So they had to put the 10-year window on it. We have to stop that sunsetting provision. What we need to do is, our tax code needs to be the code. Doesn't mean it can't be amended, doesn't mean it's not going to change and it will develop over time. But the code itself shouldn't be on a situation like it's on right now at the end of the year. December 31st at midnight, everything is repealed, all the provisions, and it goes back to 91? The laws that were in effect then, I think it is, don't quote me on the year, but it goes back to there and they all spring up. And the rates all go back up, dividend income, the capital gains, all comes back on the books. That type of tax policy, where it's springing and expiring, that's what has to be removed. And actually, when you talk to the guys, like the guys in the CFO business, counting the beans and doing all this stuff for the companies, they're actually willing to not have tax cuts per se, in exchange for that certainty, so they can plan for it, so they can actually make some investments in it. And they won't say that publicly, and I won't name names here today, but they're like, look, if you just get us that will go a long way of helping things out. Plus some other things. They need to also have some certainty when it comes to regulatory relief, so that there's more of a restraint on regulations coming out of the sheriff's government. It's really, having that cost-benefit type of return. We're supportive of an institutional reform called the RAINS Act, which would be a provision where any regulations coming out of the agencies that impact the economy of $100 million or more, they would have to come back to the House and Senate and the President to get prior approval before they come and it goes back. It's a check on the system, so to speak. That type of stuff. And then also when it comes to energy. I mean, they know that we're going to make a firm commitment to developing those domestic sources of fuel. Take the certainty in